there is a discussion about corporal punishment, and the question is whether or not corporal punishment is an effective parenting strategy. So, similar to Shakespeare, to be or not to be, that is the question. We're going to have our version, to spank or not to spank. That is the question. So, to spank, right? So, on the side of corporal punishment, right? So, most researchers don't say there's zero time for corporal punishment, right? So, if you have imminent harm to the child or others, maybe corporal punishment is appropriate. So if you have a child that is putting their finger in a light socket to smack their hand away, or if they're putting their uh, hand close to a gas range and the fire is going to burn them, you smack their hand away. Well, that's a form of a corporal punishment. We're not saying you're abusing your child, but that might be appropriate because it catches their attention and it protects them from serious, serious harm. Now, there are researchers who have weighed in as to how much corporal punishment is appropriate, how little corporal punishment is appropriate, and the dynamic. So Diane Baumrin said, if the parent and the child generally have a warm relationship and corporal punishment or spanking is as a last resort, in most cases, there's going to be little negative consequence to the child psychologically. It also isn't going to have a strong impact on the relationship between parent and child. Now, other researchers have really questioned whether corporal punishment is necessary or appropriate, right? So, um, there are many more effective strategies that one could use that doesn't require spanking a child. So, one of the big criticisms is that, well, if parents engage in corporal punishment, they're going to have their own learned response. And because temporarily it gets what they're seeking, they're going to be more likely to use corporal punishment in the future. It's reinforced. So we worry about the parents using corporal punishment not as last resort, and then it becoming more of a pattern. And that's where it could have even more profound impact on the child. So on the other side, right, to spank or not to spank, most people say if you don't have a strong relationship with the child, you want to avoid corporal punishment at all cost, right? So that's going to create strong negative emotions between the parent and the child. It's going to create fear in the child. And if the child needs something, they're not going to readily come to the parent because they're worried about punishment. Now, we also have to be aware that when you use corporal punishment, you may not realize your own strength. And as a clinical psychologist, we have to report child abuse, neglect, and maltreatment. So it is not uncommon for a person to cause bodily harm during corporal punishment because uh, they hit the child too hard or they were raging, right? So their own anger got in the way. Another big problem with corporal punishment is you're really only teaching the child to avoid the punishment, not the behavior. So if the parent's away, then the behavior will resurface, right? So they're only stopping the behavior because an authority figure is around. And we use the example of skipping curfew and getting a spanking. Well, what happens if the parents go away and you have someone who's like 17 years old and they're at home alone. Well, they may skip their curfew because there's no one there to catch them. And one of the biggest criticisms that I have is you're not actually teaching the child what you want from them. So you're punishing them, but you're not teaching the behaviors that are more desirable. So they learn what not to do, but not actually what they're supposed to do. So if people are going to engage in corporal punishment based on other researchers, uh, it suggests that it should occur fairly close to when the behavior occurred, right? Because of the issue of temporal contiguity. It should be applied consistently so that you don't have this variable ratio going on. It's easier to make the learning, and relatively without warning so that it creates more shock value, right? But that's if you're going to use corporal punishment. Now, instead of corporal punishment, I recommend parents explain to the child what they're supposed to be doing, explain to the child the desired behavior. And me personally, I'm a strong opponent of corporal punishment because, as a psychologist, it's linked to increased anxiety, depression, substance abuse, truancy, right? Skipping school, dropping out of school, and uh, criminal behavior, as well as increased risk of corporal punishment with their own child. So the idea of using uh, corporal punishment, it's unnecessary. There are other strategies, right? So think about the following possibilities. Negative punishment. If you need to use punishment, you don't need to hit your child, right? Negative punishment, if you take something away that the child likes or finds rewarding, it will do what you're trying to accomplish without you needing to raise a hand to your child. So that's the first thing. Now, if you know what the child likes, you can find the appropriate thing to take away, right? So, younger children, it might be action figures or dolls. As you get a little bit older, it might be video games, and then cell phones, and then cars, right? There are things you can take away as a meaningful consequence to misbehavior. But negative punishment doesn't even work as good as positive reinforcement. So the reality is the best strategy is to catch your child doing something right and praise them and reinforce what they're doing when they're doing the right thing, rather than corporal punishment, which is emphasizing the negative. Because if you strengthen the desired behavior, reinforce the desired behavior, there's less opportunity for the negative behavior. And all of those psychological byproducts of corporal punishment go away. You build the bond with the child, you build that closeness. There's the emotional safety, there's reduced risk of anxiety, depression, substance abuse, truancy, criminality, and corporal punishment in the future. All of these things are reduced. So why wouldn't we try something other than corporal punishment? Okay. So uh, last but not least, we're going to talk about cognitive constraints on operant conditioning.